Good day everyone, especially to our advisor, Ma'am Amy Ayaay, and panel member 1, Ma'am Glizzy Parcon, and also to our panel member 2 and research coordinator, Sir John Jefferson de la Cruz. Let we introduce ourselves. By the way, I'm Ayan Phil Bassett.
I'm Darren Lagoy Uso.
I'm Jordan St. Antonio. We are the researcher of this study entitled Perception of Criminal Deterrence Among Citizens of Tagum City, Basis for Prevention Plan.
So, introduction. One problem with deterrence theory is that it assumes that human beings are rational actors who consider the consequences of their behavior before, during to commit a crime. However, this is often not the case. Laws and policies designed to deter crime by focusing mainly on increasing the severity of punishment are ineffective partly because criminals know little about the sanction for specific crimes. More severe punishment do not chasten individuals convicted of crimes, and prisons may exacerbate recidivism. Nonetheless, deterrence is at the heart of the preventive aspiration of criminal justice. Deterrence, whether through preventive patrol by police officers or stiff prison sentences for violent offenders, is the principal mechanism through which the central feature of criminal justice. The exercise of state authority works, it is hoped, to diminish offending and enhance public safety. Deterrence is the theory that criminal penalties do not just punish violators but also discourage other people from committing similar offenses. Many people point to the need to deter criminal action after a high-profile incident in which an offender is seen to have received a light sentence. Some argues that a tougher sentence would have preventive to tragedy and can prevent a similar tragedy from taking place in the future. Examining changes in penalties, incarceration rates, and the number of police officers at the national level shows some correlation between policy changes and crime rates. Under the economic of deterrence, an expansion in the expense of wrongdoing ought to prevent individuals from perpetrating of wrongdoing. And there is proof that people who accept they are probably going to be captured and rebuffed are more averse to carry out of a wrongdoing than the individuals who don't anticipate being caught or rebuffed. For instance, targeted policing or hotspot policing regions show that few areas or areas represent an extremely high-level wrongdoings episodes. Law authorization organization reacted to this proof by focusing on those spaces with expanded police presence. Following the increment in police presence, there was decrease in wrongdoing. One review showed that multiplying by police presence delivered a decrease in 6% to 13% of wrongdoing calls. On the other hand, there is a need to conduct this study because one of the top concerns of the community is safety and security. Based on the NAMBIO 2021, crime index in Tagum City is 38.37%, which is higher than in Davao City, with 27.79%. As well, the Davao City is safer with 72.21% safety scale, whereas Tagum City has 61.53%. With this data, Tagum City has still room for improvement on preventing crimes and ensuring more safety environment for its people. Considering the crime still happening in this locality, the best course of action is to create and implement strategies on how prevent and lessen crime, not just in the short run, but in a long run basis. The researchers believe that gating and assessing their perspective on how to deter crimes might be valuable contribution on crime prevention strategies of policing in Tagum City. Next, research objective. The main purpose of conducting this study is to evaluate the perception on criminal deterrence among citizens of New Balanban, Tagum City. In particular, this study addresses the following sub-problems. Number one, what is the level of perception on criminal deterrence among citizens of New Balanban, Tagum City in terms of certainty of punishment or severity of punishment. Number two, to formulate crime prevention plan based on the result of the study. So next, the RRL or a review of related literature. This section contains the related concept, literature, and findings of this study which bear relevance to present investigation. The presented information are taken from the related references, books, published journals, internet, and magazines. Moreover, the articles focus on issues which are associated to the perception on criminal deterrence among citizens in Tagum City. Criminal deterrence. Deterrence theory received a modern makeover in 1960 when Gary Becker published Crime and Punishment. He argued that understanding criminal behavior did not depend on whether individuals had properly developed social standards, psychological inadequacies, or special inherited traits. Rather, he suggested criminal behavior came down to an economic theory of choice. Some individuals became criminals because their individual benefits and costs are different from those of the non-criminal, and not because the person has different basic motivations. Becker emphasized that an increase in the likelihood of apprehension would have a greater impact on the number of offenses than an increase in punishment. He also noted that making legal activities more attractive, such as an increase in legal income, would shift the balance and make it more likely that a person would commit a crime. This model of deterrence is known as the economic model of rational deterrence. Under the theory, since criminal acts are the result of a rational, conscious decision, preventing crime involves finding the balance between increasing the cost of crime and creating an expensive police state that eliminates personal freedom. Once the cost of committing an offense is too high, criminals will not commit the offense. The theory assumes that there is no difference between criminal and non-criminal, other than their assessment of the cost and benefits of committing crime. Severity. Severity of punishment was long thought to be the key component in deterring criminal behavior. As a result, lawmakers relied on the use of severe sanction to deter crime. Initial research supported the theory that severe punishment deter crime. A series of studies examining homicide rates found that the severity of punishment for homicide had a deterrent effect. However, when the examination expanded beyond the homicide, there was a surprise. The severity of the penalty had a positive effect on the crimes of rape, assault, larceny, robbery, burglary, and auto theft. That is, severity of punishment did not deter crime. If anything, it had the opposite effect. Severe penalties may serve other valuable purposes in criminal justice policy. They may incapacitate particular individuals and prevent those individuals from committing crime for a period of time. They may publicly denounce certain action, or they may provide an opportunity to provide rehabilitating treatment. However, as will be discussed in more detail below, multiple studies have found that severe penalties rarely, if ever, had a deterrent effect. There are a few possible explanations for this fact. Criminal act may be driven by many factors. Many crimes take place when the offender is under the influence of drug or alcohol. Others occur in the heat of passion. When a person experiences a strong emotion, uh, it makes a logical sense that a model assuming criminals engage in a rational cost-benefit analysis before committing a crime would not accurately predict conduct by people with the impaired ability to think rationally. But this does not explain why the severity punishment did not deter economic crime like theft and burglary. Severity. On its face, severity of punishment appears to be an objective fact. A person commits an offense and receives unknown consequences. However, actual consequences may differ based on multiple factors, and a potential offender may not have accurate information about likely sanction. The state can raise the maximum penalty for an offense, but does not necessarily change the expectation of someone who might be considering committing a crime. If a person is weighing the benefits of committing a crime against the potential consequences of that act, it is the potential offender's actual belief about a likely sanction that matters. The majority of offenders who have been interviewed report that they did not know what potential sentence or they face. Not surprisingly, then many reported that they did not consider the potential sentence at all before acting. Increasing penalties cannot have any effect if potential offenders are not aware of the change. Even if the offenders know what potential penalties they faced, their assessment of those penalties may be different than what lawmakers intend. Interviews with offenders show that longer sentences have diminishing returns. That is, a potential offender does not view a sentence that has double as being twice as severe. Sentences of 5 years were seen to be only twice as severe as a 1-year sentence, and sentences of 10 years were seen as 4 times as severe as a sentence of a single year. Longer sentences continued that trend. A sentence of 20 years was perceived as only 6 times harsher than a sentence 1 year, and less than half again as harsh as a 10-year sentence. Certainty. Certainty of punishment is generally considered to be more important than the severity of that punishment. Indeed, studies suggest that the deterrent effect of certainty is far stronger than that of severity. In certainty, subjective certainty is more important than objective certainty. That is, an individual belief about whether punishment is likely is more important than the fact that punishment is or is not actually likely. That is subjective belief come from publicity, but more often comes either from personal experiences or anecdotal information from others' community. The first perception that individuals, the subjective belief can come from publicity, but more often comes either from personal experiences or anecdotal information from others in the community. The first perception that individuals form tends to be unreasonably high. Individuals who commit offenses and successfully avoid punishment often increase their offending behavior based, in part, on the belief that avoiding arrest once suggests that punishment remains unlikely. Perception of risk can also be influenced by substance use, the presence of peers, and other situations that influence a person's emotional responses. Like severity, increasing the certainty of punishment appears to produce diminishing returns. There is evidence that the perceived probability of arrest must exceed 30% to have meaningful deterrent effect, and that the deterrent effect increases until the perceived probability reaches about 70%. But probability above 70% offers only slightly more deterrent than the 70% probability. As Becker noted, there is a balance to be found in certainty, raising that the probability of arrest and conviction to 100% would involve significant social cost, including paying for a vast police force and surrendering individual privacy and liberty.
Theoretical framework. This paper will be anchored by the study of Gary Becker, 1968. He incorporated into his format model of deterrence theory an explicit statement that the theory's components certainty and severity of punishment are more or less influential that one another depend, depend, depending on an individual's preference for risk. The certainty of punishment is more influential than the severity of punishment in the decision of whether or not commit crime of an individual is risk consistent. If a criminal is risk averse, then the severity of punishment is more important than the certainty of punishment. Several studies support on this study. They common state that the certainty and severity of punishment should have equal standing as deterrent factors because they operate in conjunction with one another of reduce an expected cost of committing a crime yet. Scholars have long insisted on the idea that rational individuals perceive the effects of probabilities of arrest and conviction and the severity of punishment differently. Further, there are scholars who argued that the elements of deterrence theory should be equal important on crime prevention policy. Conceptual framework. Figure 1 shows the conceptual paradigm of the study which illustrates the relevant elements of variables of research design. Consequently, the main concept of the study present and significant relationship variables which consist of a variable of the study. On the other hand, the determinants of criminal deterrence are based on model of deterrence theory, determining the two major elements created by Baker, 1968, namely certainty of punishment and severity of punishment. The first determinant means the clear consequence or very high chance of getting punishment when citizens do something unabiding to the law. Whereas the second determinant refers of deterrence methods of punishment according to the what crime is committed and its relative extent of burden. This study will insignificant as will give idea how policy makers of Tagum City create sound criminal deterrence strategies to achieve and maintain peace and order of entire community. Since their paper will be examined the citizens of the city, this should be effective step in order to know realistically what makes Tagumeños abide to laws. Criminal deterrence, certainty of punishment, severity of punishment, crime prevention plan. Significance of the study. Due to the increasing cases of criminal activities in our country, especially at the Tagum City, there is a need to develop and practice crime deterrence approach to keep it safe from crimes and ensure that security among the people living in community. The data and findings and results, this study will surely ameliorate the understanding of the readers about perception of criminal deterrence among citizens in Tagum City. Moreover, the result of the study will beneficial of the citizens of Tagum City, Philippine National Police, Tagum educators, students, and researchers. Definition of term. Criminal deterrence. As used in the study, it is deterrence in relation to criminal offending is the idea or theory that the threat of punishment will deter people from committing crime and reduce the probability and or level of offending in society. Crime prevention, as used in this study, it is the strategy in preventing and detection of crime, am- aiming to reduce the opportunity for individuals to commit crime and enhance the safe and secure concept of living in the community of jurisdiction.
Method. Participants. The researchers considered the resident in New Balanban, Tagum City, age 18 years old and above as the target respondents of this study who are capable to shed light on the criminal deterrence in the community. The researcher locally is chosen based on crime rate. New Balanban hold the highest crime rate, hence making it the target location of the study. According to the latest report from Philippine National Police Tagum, among 23 barangays, New Balanban records 301 offenses from January 1, 2021 to November 19, 2021. Simple random sampling is used wherein the respondents are randomly selected due to convenience, availability, and accessibility of the target respondents. Material and instruments. The study shall use descriptive, not experimental, research design. This study involves collection of quantitative information that can be tabulated along in continuum and numerical form, such as scores on a test or the number of times a resident of this study chooses to use certain idea or categories of information. In the research method being used of this study, with this research method, it can determine and analyze the obtained data or the necessary information regarding the perception of criminal deterrence among citizens in New Balanban, Tagum City, Davao del Norte. The statistical instrument used in gathering necessary data from the target respondents and researcher-made questionnaire that consists of items and determining the perception on criminal deterrence among citizens in New Balanban, Tagum City, Davao del Norte. In order to obtain numerical research of data gathering, a measure of scales and used to determine the extent of perception on criminal deterrence among citizens in Tagum City. The framework below presents the parameter of the study. The set of questionnaire deals with the criminal deterrence in the city. The following indicators: certainty of punishment and severity punishment. Range of means, level, description. 4.30-5.00 very high. It signifies that the criminal deterrence in Tagum City is very much evident. 3.50-4.20 high. It signifies that the criminal deterrence in Tagum City is much evident. 2.70-3.40 moderate. It signifies that the criminal deterrence in Tagum City is evident. 1.90-2.60 low. It signifies that the criminal deterrence in Tagum City is moderately evident. 1.00-1.80 very low. It signifies that the criminal deterrence in Tagum City is not evident. Data collection. The researchers administer the test proper on the target respondents through sending Google survey form the emails respondents, but beforehand, realignment of the procedures are highly observed on or before the conduct of the study. Consequently, the researcher ensures a request letter to execute the conduct of the study on the target response, and upon approval, research and made questionnaires have been passed to check the validity of the test questionnaire. After the truth validation of the questionnaire type of research instrument, the research team plan ahead on the systemized procedure and conducting the gathering of data among the target response, and ensure enough copy of questionnaire to be able to collect exact amount of information needed to comply and determine the focus of the study. The overall response taken from the questionnaire are statistically analyzed through the use of means as statistical tool. This will be used to determine the extent or degree of perception on criminal deterrence among residents in Tagum City. It will further provide insight about where the data collected from respondents seems to be clustered around. Questionnaire on the level of criminal deterrence. Name optional. Direction. The item below measure the level of criminal deterrence based on your experiences as residents. Please encircle the corresponding level with the following scaling method below. Scale, description, meaning. 5. Very high. This implies that criminal deterrence is very much evident. 4. High. This implies that criminal deterrence is much evident. 3. Moderate. That this implies the criminal deterrence is evident. 2. Low. This implies the criminal deterrence is moderate evident. 1. Very low. This implies that the criminal deterrence is not evident. A. Certainty of punishment. As a resident, I know that it is a system for punishment for any offense committed. Number 2. I know that the law enforcers are ready to capture or correct people who make offenses. 3. I know that people in the community are willing to report any unusual happenings or suspected offense to the authority. 4. I know that law enforcers are strictly monitoring the community. 5. I know that any forms of offense are punishable to maintain public peace and order. B. Severity of punishment. As a resident, I am aware that I may pay a fine for an offense I make. 2. I am aware that I may be imprisoned for several days up to years, which will depend on the offense I commit. I am aware that the punishment will affect adversely my family and my social relations. 4. I am aware that it is burden and somehow ruin my image as a person. 5. I am aware that it may affect my future, like difficulty on finding a job. That's all. Thank you.